Okay, we're back. This is our second segment here. I guess we, if we're pros, Alex, we would call this the B block. So
Right. Okay.
we're
B
on the
block.
B block now. We're still on college football. Let's go to tonight. Let's just talk about Washington and Michigan a little bit. What are you looking for as a fan, but also just as a football guy? What are you looking for out of each of these teams tonight?
I think for Washington, I think I'm looking at protection. Michigan had I think 5 or 6 sacks in the first half against Alabama. So can they protect Penix? And then what can those receivers do facing that man coverage and Michigan's defense? I think Texas DBs are kind of quite outmatched, but Michigan's much more physical, and I think at the line of scrimmage, can they get off the ball, and what kind of defenses are they going to face? And then I think for Michigan, are they able to establish the run? I think that is really their key to success, and so that's what I'm going to be looking for. And then JJ McCarthy, when we need you to make a play, is he going to make a play? Because like you said early in the Michigan game, he looked a little shaky, a little nervous, but at the end, that even though the pass was tipped, it's still that ball is going to be right on the money, and that's just a big late game throw. And so it's like, at the end when they needed him, he came to play and made a big time throw. So I think overall, though, Michigan run game, defensive physicality at the line of scrimmage is where they win this.
Yeah, I really have to agree with you there. And I think maybe even to simplify it a little bit more, I think Michael Penix is the best player that will be dressed up tonight. I think Michigan is just a better team.
Yeah,
They're just a better team. They've got more weapons in more places. And I think it will come down to up front.
right.
I think Michigan is going to try to control the ball. They're going to try to keep Michael Penix off the field.
Yeah,
And their running back is a great running back. I think McCarthy will hand the ball off most of the game, and he will have some play action,
right.
and occasionally they'll do some things to kind of get him in rhythm. But yeah, I really see tonight going. Now if Michigan can force a couple of turnovers,
Yeah,
then I think they can win by more than one score, a couple of
definitely.
scores.
Yeah,
On the other hand, if Washington can force turnovers or if Michigan muffs a couple of punts,
right.
Washington can win this game.
Yeah,
But I just think Michigan's a better team. I think it's their time. All the rumors are that Harbaugh is moving on
right.
after
So
tonight.
it's kind of a last
So I think a
hurrah.
lot of a lot of Michigan folks are feeling like, it's all the chips on the table
Right.
for tonight.
That's a fair
Um,
point. Yeah.
and Washington, even though I don't really love to bring in other seasons because this is just about this season and this is
Right.
about one game. But when you think about the program and everything that this means, it's kind of like Super Bowl week, and they
Yeah.
have media week. Players are going to be answering questions that are not. I would bet 10% of their questions that all these kids are answering is about the game.
Yeah.
90% of what they're talking about is who their childhood hero was, how long they've been looking forward to this game, how this is the biggest day of their life.
Right.
And it's almost like, this isn't always true, but when you date a girl and you figure out she's the one,
Yeah.
and then you ask her to marry you and she says yes. When she says yes, this isn't always true, but it's a little bit true almost all the time. When she says yes, from that moment until the wedding is build up and hype.
Right. Yeah.
It's like the media days before the national championship. It's like, this is what we've been waiting for our whole life. This is what I dreamed about when I was a kid. On and on and on. And as soon as the game starts, as soon as the ball is kicked off tonight, it's actually, you got to actually be married,
right.
and you gotta come to the table and you gotta perform.
Yeah.
You got to get done the real deal. Real life begins, and unlike a marriage, this game is going to last for a
Right.
little over 3 hours.
Right.
But that's the real deal, and then it's all over. And so what happens in any football game, and I think it's just magnified exponentially in big games, and tonight's the biggest in college football. What happens in a football game, and you know this, for those of anyone listening who doesn't know this, I used to coach Alex back when he was a youngster. He was a very talented football player. But when you're in a football game, you bring certain beliefs into that game.
Right.
And you try to get that out of the way, and as a coach, and in terms of preparation, you try to get your team to focus on the opportunity. What is it that we need to do? How do we need to execute? We need to focus. We need to do these certain things in order to win the game. And then you put a game plan together that puts you guys in the best position to win. Well, what happens though is you bring these beliefs into the game, and I can promise you right now, Michigan believes they're going to win this game. There is no doubt in their mind. Doesn't mean they're going to do it.
Right. But
Washington is they hopefully, and they should be thinking the same thing.
Right.
But what's going to happen is, in the course of a game, bad plays happen, bad breaks happen, unlucky things happen. Somebody gets injured. Somebody turns the ball over. Maybe there's no turnovers and no scores for like a quarter and a half.
Right.
Kind of like, wasn't that the case with the Bills-Dolphins last night? Like, for a little while, like, you're like, these are electric teams and nobody's scoring.
Yeah.
So it's almost like the balloon just builds up with that pressure.
Right.
And then as soon as somebody scores, it's like, poof, it's like, oh my gosh, that one play is just huge. And so I think that this game is going to be like any other game, in that certain things are going to happen. And are those, if something bad to Washington happens early, are they going to start to be like,
the self-doubt?
They're just better than us.
Right.
As opposed to when things have happened bad early to Michigan, are they going to be like, doesn't matter, that's a bump.
Right.
We got these guys. We got them.
Yeah, I think I really think it's up to the leadership of Michael Penix, and because, as the quarterback of that team, it's so weird, like you said, just talking about if something bad goes wrong or injuries, how it can take the air out of a team. Well, and Washington, they're 10-point underdogs, I think, in the Pac-12 championship against Oregon, even though they beat Oregon. And so, fast forward to now, it's like, something happens or they get down by even, a touchdown or 10-point game, and it's like, well, do guys start to believe, we really didn't even, we don't deserve to be here, or, they're just better than us.
Or does it piss them off a little bit to say we don't get enough respect?
Right, exactly.
We know nobody believes in us except us, and that can almost strengthen your confidence.
And I think going into the game, that's what they're saying, and that's what they're believing. However, I think, if they do get down by 10, then, it's really up to, those leaders on the football team to, because there's going to, self-doubt is, natural, especially if you're not, one of the alphas or the dogs, the leadership guy, and something happens, you're you're a skill position guy and you do good things for the team, but bad things are kind of not going your way. It's like you can get down. And so I don't know. I think really just as much physically in the trenches, I think Washington, the mental aspect of them and this just staying tough is going to be a great hurdle for them.
Yeah. So just as a to look at some of the facts, we're going to come back to the Heisman in a little bit, but just as an example, Michael Penix has 4,600 yards passing this year.
That's crazy.
Dylan Johnson has 1,100 yards rushing. The receiving yards, they've got a Dunze with 1,500. But in terms of the offense, the entire passing game and the rushing game combined is, 1749. That's what, 6,600.
Right.
So out of the 6,600 yards, Michael Penix is throwing for 4,600. That's like 70-something% of their entire offense.
Wow.
Is Michael Penix. Now, Michael Penix, just as we come back to the Heisman, keep this in mind. Penix has 32 carries for 13 yards. Not a big runner.
No.
I mean, gosh, I could even say Baker Mayfield is a dual threat more than Michael Penix. He is staying in the pocket and he's getting rid of the ball. But at 4,600 yards, his completion percentage is exactly 2/3, 66.7%, averaging 9.2, 35 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, and a 163 rating.
Wow.
I mean, the guy is playing the quarterback position
About as good as
at a pro level. I mean, those are NFL type numbers that you expect to see. On the other hand, when you are, let's see if I can pull up. I want to pull up Michigan's offense and kind of see what those numbers are, and it'll take me a second to do that. But I just believe that Michigan's offense is more balanced. And
right.
It kind of like you're saying, the leadership of Penix can come down to it. But you mentioned the Bills and the Dolphins last night. I think Josh Allen has a tendency to do this, and I think Michael Penix might have a tendency to do this tonight, is if they do get a little bit behind.
Right.
What's going to happen is Michael Penix is never going to quit.
No.
And none of them are ever going to quit. But Michael Penix is never going to believe they can't come back and win.
I believe that
He and sometimes when you've got a guy that is a superstar, and when you've got a guy that most of the offense is on his back, that guy can make a play here or there. Maybe you're down by 10 in the third quarter.
Right.
Maybe your offense has been sputtering. Maybe Michigan misses a field goal that would have put them up 2 scores, but then Michael Penix makes a huge play and gets you right back within 3 in the third quarter. And now everybody's rallying. Now it's like fourth quarter's close. Penix is going to push us over the edge.
Right.
Because that's the other thing too, is if it's close at the end, Washington leaning on Penix is probably going to be better for them.
Definitely.
Than if Michigan has to lean on McCarthy and Michigan's behind.
100%.
If Michigan's behind 4 in the fourth quarter, McCarthy's okay, and I'm not saying he can't pull them through, but I'd rather have Michael Penix leading my team.
Definitely.
If I'm down in the fourth quarter. Okay, so Michigan, just to look at their quick stats for the year on offense. So McCarthy has 2,800 yards passing.
So half it.
Corum has 1,100 yards rushing.
Wow.
So just their overall passing offense is right at 3,000. They're at 5,200 offense.
Wow.
So 7,600 yards of offense and 5,200 yards of offense. They're into ball control.
Right. Time of possession.
They're playing tough guy football. I mean, that's Big Ten, tough guy, cold weather football. Not that it's not cold in the Northwest, but it's different.
Right.
It's different in the Big Ten.
Times a game.
So yeah. So I see. I mean, if it's a clean game, both teams play really, really well, then I think it's 28-21, maybe 28-17.
Right.
If somebody screws up and there's a couple of big turnovers or there's a big pick six, then obviously in Washington's favor, I think it could be close. And if it's close in the fourth quarter, I think Washington's got an edge.
Right.
I think the way Michigan wants to win this game is they want to be up by at least a score. It's that last possession of the first half, that 2-for-1 if they're able to, defer but then score at the end of the first quarter or first half. Maybe they're up 14-7 at half, and then they get the ball
right out of
opening drive of the third quarter. If it's 21-7 or if it's 17-7, that's where Michigan wants Washington.
Definitely.
And if Washington can't battle right back and answer, or if Washington gets a stop and then they tie it or they get a field goal and now it's 14-10 or now it's 17-17 in the third quarter, the longer it goes that it's within one score or close, I think Washington's got a really good chance. And I think the pressure starts to buckle maybe on Michigan. But if Michigan is up, 28-14 with 10 minutes to go in the game, I think Michael Penix probably, still might have a valiant effort and go drive down, score, cut it to one score. But I don't think if Michigan never has any doubts creep in during the game, they're going to win.
Definitely.
That's what I think.
I agree.
So what does Washington have to do to create the doubt? They're going to have to do something spectacular like force a fumble, get a pick six.
Right.
And you know what? I will say this. Early on, the play calling against Alabama, I thought Michigan was throwing the ball far too much.
Right. Yeah, we talked about that. Yes.
And so if Michigan comes out and is like, "Hey, we're just gonna too confident, like we're just gonna throw all over, we're gonna run on, we're gonna do whatever we want," you know,
that's a bad.
You risk something.
Right.
And I'm not saying Michigan should play too conservative, but I just think they ought to play to their strength. And if they play to their strength and play mistake-free football, they're gonna win.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, I think if J.J. McCarthy's thrown 15 passes in the first half, they've gone away from their game plan.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Good. Okay. Last thing with college football, and we can kind of let's go ahead and do this, even though I know we're running a little longer than we thought, and we'll probably just be brief next time. But with college football, I think we're done with what I'm about to say, because
right.
what I'm about to say I think is reflective. Well, we may not be done. What I'm about to say is going to be handled with the playoff. For the most part, when you got 12 teams in the playoff next year, it's going to be really hard for a committee to rig this thing.
Right.
But it is such an uneven playing field in college football when it comes to so many things that programs with money can do.
Yeah.
That programs with money cannot do. And the ultimate money in college football is with the television networks.
Right.
And the biggest network is Disney, ABC, ESPN. And you may know this, but Disney has lost over $140 billion in their stock in the last 18 months.
Yeah.
Disney is crumbling at the core. One of the things that Disney has going for it, though, is football.
Right. I mean,
ESPN, and I don't know that ESPN is actually making a ton of money, because ESPN is trying to do a lot of stuff that I don't think its viewers like. But when it comes to college football, it's making money.
Right.
And the biggest moneymaker for ESPN is the SEC.
Yeah.
And so I do think that if Georgia had beaten Alabama, it would have been a no-brainer. Nobody would have argued. Georgia was number one all year. It would
Definitely.
have been no-brainer. But the fact that Alabama beat Georgia, and honestly, the fact that Alabama was weak all year before they beat Georgia, it just made it complicated.
Yes.
And I think the college football committee, and because a lot of these journalists are affiliated with ESPN, and a lot of them wanted to see the good games, and I do understand a little bit. I don't think it's right, but I do understand the argument of, hey, we want to see two semifinal games that are juggernauts. We want to see a great game, and we did. We saw two games with four teams that are great teams. Probably out of the four teams, Washington is the least blue blood out of the four. I mean, Texas is a program that hopes to be Michigan next year.
Yeah.
I mean, Texas has not been great for a long time, but they're a program that I don't think anybody in the country's got more money than Texas. So I guess what I'm getting at, and the Heisman is part of this, I think Jaden Daniels had a great year. I think to say that Jaden Daniels does not deserve the Heisman Trophy would be unfair. I'm not going to say that. I think Jaden Daniels deserves the Heisman Trophy. But I don't understand why Michael Penix didn't get it.
Yeah, I mean, he was unbelievable this year, and consistently through competition. Like, I just, I understand, like, it's the SEC, yada yada yada, but like, when you're playing, I don't even know, like Grambling States and stuff like that, and you throw for 5 touchdowns or score 5 touchdowns and a half, like, what, like, this, I just don't know.
Well, traditionally, and again, not that tradition matters, but historically, if your team lost 3 or more games, you're not going to win the Heisman.
Right. Because how is it like an MVP thing or like?
Yeah. So, does Michael Penix leading his, not only does he have the standalone statistics
Right.
to win the Heisman, but his team is
Team
undefeated
success,
and playing for a
exactly.
national championship. LSU is not,
100%.
and that used to matter.
It does not anymore. And I agree. Like, that's just sad. And like you're saying, like, team success is so undervalued now. It's just like, well, he just looked really great on TV. Is that like the inconsistency and from now to what it used to be? I think, and then like going back to the football playoff too, it's like just tell us the system, and then like we can make our own decisions. But when the criteria, is constantly changing, well, like that's why you get all that argument and controversy and whatever, because like year to year, you know, it just doesn't make sense. It's like, well,
Right.
this year we just want the best TV product. That's basically like what you're saying this year, and it's true.
Right.
And then other years, well, they were really deserving, so they deserve to be there, and so we're gonna put them in. It's like, well, year to year, like it can't just change that criteria, and that's
Well, and this kind of bleeds over into some other topics that are more political or social issues, but when you let things other than merit influence awards, or when you acknowledge achievement that is not pure,
yeah,
then it clouds things. And I can remember even in the 90s, there were years that Jordan had, he'd won the MVP, 4 years in a row,
right,
and then somebody else would get it. Like John Stockton maybe got
right,
it one year, and John Stockton was great, and I wasn't upset that John Stockton won it, and nobody was, frankly, because Jordan had just clearly been the best player.
right,
And I think LeBron can say this in the last decade too.
definitely, yeah,
LeBron has been the best player multiple years and not won the MVP.
right,
And so it's almost like when you have that, you know, banquet at the end of the year, and you're like, hey, this kid XYZ over here, he worked really hard. He really didn't achieve anything
right,
other than he did his best. He did everything we asked him to do, and we just want to reward him. We want to acknowledge his efforts or
right,
whatever. And there's a place for that. I think that's good. I don't think the Heisman Trophy is the place for that.
definitely,
And I also don't think that Jaden Daniels won the Heisman because the country felt sorry for LSU,
right,
or they felt sorry for Jaden Daniels, or they had something against Michael Penix. I don't think any of that is true, but I believe very wholeheartedly that there are major dollars tied to the SEC, and that's
right,
not a belief; that's a fact.
yeah,
And when you've got those major dollars tied to the SEC, things like Alabama squeaking into the playoff,
right,
and things like
an SEC
Jaden
player,
Daniels winning the Heisman, it's subject to scrutiny
right,
because it's the integrity is compromised,
right,
and that's what is so difficult. But I think the playoffs will resolve a lot of that. I'm going to wrap this up because we've gone a little bit long here, and then come back to the last segment as we get into the NFL. But there's one more thing that we need to talk about with college. But this is Take It to the House. We'll be back